It's time for a Humans in Tune conversation with Darren on 93.9 Mike FM.
Hey, Mike FM friends and family. We are here for another Humans in Tune conversation, ready to dig in deep on the spooky season. October's upon us. Halloween just around the corner, but we kind of celebrate the whole month around here. I know I do. I got my yard ornaments up and all that good stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about a resident history nugget here in Cape, the Glen House, a fine historical place. But when it comes to being this time of year, 'tis the spooky season, and the Glen House comes 100% ready for it. In the studio with me, Christy Mershon. Christy, welcome to 93.9 Mike FM and Humans in Tune.
I am so glad to be here and talk spooky, right?
That's it. Yes.
So.
We're all about the spooky. But yeah, as I mentioned, you guys have a reputation for being haunted, for being spooky, not just obviously in this season, but year round. It's not like the ghosts only come out in October and they're like, well, time to go to work,
That'd
But
be pretty awesome, actually, if they would just stay confined to a month, and then we wouldn't have to deal with it the rest of the year. It'd be awesome.
Oh, we could spend hours just talking ghost stories down there and experiences you've had and other volunteers have had and so forth around there and the carriage house and throughout. And if you've never been to the Glen House to tour, during Halloween time or during Christmas time or anything else, man, it's just a cool tour historically, just to see that frozen in time moment down in Cape Girardeau history and to see what you guys have there on display. I know you change things up too from now and again as far as what's on display and so forth. So if you've been there before, it's probably time for you to come back. But as we're in the spooky season, we don't get a Friday the 13th this year.
But we get a Monday the 13th.
We get a Monday the 13th.
And I mean, isn't Monday inherently just scarier than Friday?
Definitely more evil than Friday.
Yeah, I started to say. So I think it bodes well for some scary stuff on a Monday the 13th. We're going to try it anyway.
Yes, absolutely. So Monday Madness, let's talk about this coming up this Monday the 13th.
Monday Madness. So right now, the house is in Victorian mourning. So even if you come on a regular tour, we're open every weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 4. There's been a death in the house. We've got an arsenic dress in a casket in the front parlor. It is a real arsenic dress. And if you don't know what that is, you can look it up and we will happily tell you about it. As the house itself is just a little spooky. But since, the gods gave us a Monday the 13th this year, we thought we'd roll with it. And we're doing what we have started calling the Bare Bones Ghost Tour. There are a lot of folks who don't want bells and whistles. We do a lot of big events, but this is a stripped down. We're going to leave the lights low. We'll give you some of your very own ghost hunting equipment. We take small groups in with one tour guide and tell you some of the stories and then give you a little time to take some pictures and wander around and sort of see if you experience anything odd in the house. And, clarifying the Glen House is a Victorian house museum. So we're not a haunted house. We are just a house museum that may happen to be haunted.
I like that. That's like to keep you out of any legal obligations. Yeah. I did not find any ghosts, ma'am.
Yes. And people are like, do you stage things? Do you dress the house up? When I say that we've got Victorian morning wear, we have authentic Victorian morning wear. And like any proper museum, we talk about death and funeral traditions and customs. And it's inherently sort of cool. We have 2 wreaths in the house made out of human hair. Those are up all year round. But Victorians did that as a way to remember their loved ones. So it wasn't meant to be creepy to them. To us, it's very off-putting.
It's very macabre to have somebody's hair in a wreath, right? Well, but that's a society today.
And even dolls, they didn't have synthetic hair. So people don't think about the fact that dolls before a certain time, their hair is all human hair, right? And other sort of strange things that are just a part of life for those folks that just seem a little creepy and off-putting to us. So, I mean, that's creepy enough.
Well, it was a different era. Penicillin necessarily, that thing wasn't around, A lot of people died young and death was a different mask that we wore and a different picture that we looked at that time.
Even life, so we have in the nursery, which is a room that people just tend to find inherently creepy. But we have these rugs on the floor that are period appropriate, that have little animals on them. And if you look closely, the animals are eating each other, right? It's very sort of Grimm's fairy tale.
Yes.
That's not what you would put in your kids' room today, but they didn't think anything about it because they just sort of lived a little closer to nature and closer to death than we do. So those conversations are interesting to have. But the kind of cool thing, if you are into this and into spooky season, listen, if something happens to you at the Glen House, I can 100% assure you we did not manufacture it. And in fact, there are probably people that sort of like watch your Facebook Lives that have been on ghost tours with me there where I have left them. Because when I'm not kidding, if things happen that make me uncomfortable, I'm like, y'all can stay. I'll be on the front porch. Because that is not, I'm Scooby-Doo over
Yeah, I was
here.
gonna say you're
I'm like,
pulling your inner Scooby-Doo and like,
see you, Shaggy.
yikes, Scoob!
Yeah, that's
There goes
me.
Christy.
That's me, 1,000%.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, the ghost tours kick off Monday.
Yes.
You're going to do tours every half hour starting at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, yep. And so if you like the, if you want to do your own investigation, that's sort of your chance to be able to have a little bit of time in the house on your own in the evening. And we have other opportunities you and I are going to talk about, but those are more event oriented. So you can still go in the house and you can still be there at night and we'll do the ghost stories. But this is the one time that we'll have it totally quiet, dark.
Yep.
Let you have those sensory experiences that I so love myself, and that is pure sarcasm. But there are a lot of crazy folks like you out there in the world, Darren, who I know really love this stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's the inner skeptic in me, right? I always try to reason it out and science it out. I'll get really spooked if I can't reason it out and science it out pretty quick, So
did you promo like how this conversation came about, that we ran into each other?
No.
And I showed a video.
Yeah, and I could play the audio from that.
Yeah, do, because I shared a video with Darren that I was like, hey, a friend who's the audio nerd, please make this make sense without being spooky, because I don't want this to be a real spooky occurrence.
Yeah. Now, they can't see the video for this, but I'm going to play it. It's only 11 seconds long. And I want you to check out the audio from this. Oh, it helps if I unmute it. Let me start over. I'm playing it off of Facebook here, so I've got to, there we go. Okay. Get back to the beginning. Stop. Pause. Okay. This is off of just a little speaker box, nothing, no crazy technology next level.
No spirit boxes, just I was playing music on a Bluetooth speaker.
Okay, I got the volume up. I'm going to do it again. Go back. See if you can hear what is coming through this speaker. Okay, the speaker is being turned off, and it says help before it goes. I'm turning it off. Listen. Okay, so there you go. There's your little chill down the back. But yeah, she showed me that video, and it was. And you guys have had the ghost hunters come to the place. You guys have had a couple of paranormal investigators come through with all the bells and whistles to check all these things out. It's interesting, and we're not going to talk those guys up. They can promote their own shows, but you can go back. You can find those files easy enough to watch those experiences too. But
it's very interesting too how different people from different places have similar sorts of experiences, and so things like this, like the backstory on that, I came in and I can tell you the date because it's date stamped on the video. It was so hot this summer, and we had a rainstorm on like August 29th. And that next day, if you remember, it was like the first day we all took a deep breath because the weather was awesome. And I was working tours that day by myself. I figured no one would come to the house just simply because those are the days everybody wants to be outside.
Yeah, they're doing other stuff.
But I opened all the doors, and there's a ton, and as many windows and stuff as I could, just to let fresh air in after the summer. And when I did it, I could see all the cobwebs. So I had grabbed that speaker, turned it onto a playlist, and grabbed a broom and was knocking cobwebs and things down. I was in another room from the speaker. The playlist was playing. All of a sudden, I hear the little noise that indicates that the speaker's turning off, and I had plugged it in because since it's one that stays there and you never know if it's fully charged or not.
Right, yeah, the untrustable battery. Yes.
So like I plugged it in just on the off chance that it was low or what have you. And I thought maybe I didn't get the USB cord in just right. That was, the logical.
Trying to logic out, yeah.
Yeah. And so it turned off, and then it turned back on again. And I thought, yeah, it's got to be loose or whatever. And then as I was turning to go check it out is when I heard it do that the first time. And I thought, I didn't just hear that, right? So I stood there, music played again, started kind of cleaning again, kicked off. I hear that noise. And then as I walked around the corner, I can see, when you see the video, it says off on the speaker.
On
the
the screen.
speaker is turned off. And then that sound comes. Some people hear help. Some people hear out. The speaker does talk. It says, please charge. The battery is low.
Your door is ajar.
Right. And so I was trying to figure out if like some snippet of that could play. That was when I came to you. I was like, if you took those words and you just played a snippet, would it sound like out or help, please? Or, you know, so anyway, it's interesting. I'm still looking for an explanation. I told Darren, I said, is there some kind of magic we can do to look at this file? Like the audio behind the
Put
scenes
it in the
part.
spectrum analyzer.
Yeah, just
like
see
CSI.
what it is. Yeah, because I want a logical explanation.
Right? Yeah, don't we all
Yeah.
when those spooky moments come? Well, you know, if you're lucky, I say lucky, if you're hopeful to be lucky, I think you know it's a good spot to come in, experience some spookiness. Maybe it's explainable, maybe it's not, but this is the time to do it. And you guys will have some s'mores.
We
on the Happy
always
Rainbow
have,
side.
that's one of
got
those
some
things. If
s'mores.
you're going to get scared, I feel like the balance is we almost always have a fire pit and we have s'more kits. And while you're waiting or, you know, afterward, a little sugar doesn't hurt anything.
That's
after
right.
you get the snot being scared out of you, just, you know, get a little sugar to get back into the groove of things. But we have so many fun events. I mean, October is always packed. We're doing some events for local schools and various groups on October 17th. Last year, I did a pop-up event, a Spookeasy. And so we had a band back in the carriage house. I had to turn people away when we hit like 250. So I thought we should bring it back. Yeah. We have a really cool partnership with Underberg House Concerts. They have a renowned blues artist from England coming over. Bex Marshall is her name. And then my friend Kat Holiday, who is a good spirit, and Kat plays all the time. So Bex will be in the carriage house and Kat will be in the main house. We'll have fire performers, tarot readers, a whole spookeasy vibe. Wear your best 1920s apparel and come and see the spirits at the spookeasy. That one's going to be fun.
See the spirits, drink the spirits. It's a 21 and upper, right?
Drink the spirits. So we've got that going on. We've got, on Halloween night. We hold this house in trust. It's a 501c. We're a community organization, and so many people are interested. We have a kiddo event. So from 5 to 7, if you're out trick-or-treating with the kids, bring them by. We do our trick-or-treating sort of visitation style with that arsenic dress. You come in, you go out the back door, and you get your candy. We're partnering with Simo Nasby, and they're going to have the fire pit and be selling some s'mores kits in the backyard if you want to help support them. And also Green Bear will be around if you know Green Bear. So we're always happy to have community partnerships. So that's early on Halloween night.
And that's free. That's open to the public.
That's a free event. My buddy Dwayne Schaff from Celebrations just made an announcement. Actually, I'm sorry, Dwayne didn't make the announcement. His alter ego, Dusty. Heck
yeah, man.
He did. There was an announcement out there earlier. He is going to help us out with a wandering spirits. So, Darren, we have a problem. We have about $80,000 worth of windows to fix. And it's great at Halloween when the spirits wander. But the rest of the year, we'd like the windows to be fixed so we can keep them in. But on Halloween night, it'll be cool.
Spirits are terrible for the HVAC efficiency.
They are. They're just, all those cold and hot spots. But Celebrations Downtown, Dwayne's going to do an event to help benefit the house and those windows. We're doing a pop-up seance bar at Celebrations Downtown and calling forth the spirits at the seance. So you get some drinks and snackies there. The spirits, possibly me in a costume, but the spirits will wander down, and we're going to take a ghostly tour up Spanish Street to the Glen House, where we'll have a second party because it's Halloween night, right? Amber Vandeven is going to play at the Glen House, and we'll have spooky tours and some tarot readers there. That'll last for a little while. And then if you feel like wandering back downtown, the Bloodsuckers Ball, which is Whitney Quick's annual community Halloween party, will be happening at Ebb and Flow with DJ Two Fingers Up. If you do the Celebrations ticket, it's $30, gets you all the parties, and you can wander in and out at your leisure. If you decide you don't want to do that and you just want to come to the Bloodsuckers Ball, That's an ebb and flow later in the evening, and that's a $5 cover. And Dwayne is graciously helping to support us by donating that.
That's awesome.
And if that's not your jam, but you are really into your dogs and cats and furry friends, we're
We do love our
partnering.
furry buddies.
Yeah, Mississippi Mutts had a cool idea for an event, and we said, yeah, we'd love to partner. So Howell-O-Ween, we like our punny names. And we're going to be showing a pet-themed movie. All rights reserved.
Is it going to be Spooky Buddies?
It's going to be something pet themed,
Okay.
and have
I'm a big Spooky Buddies
s'mores.
guy. I'm more of a Spooky Buddies 2 fan, but I'll let it slide.
That pet photographs on the front porch, and then if you'd like to come in the house that night with the furry friend outside, hopefully, then we'll also be doing ghost tours of the house on the 26th. That is a Sunday.
And that's 5:30 to 8:30.
That's 5:30 to 8:30, and the outside events are free. It's $5 if you want to come in and take a wander around at the spooky tours. So lots of ways to engage. And then you'll see me out on the streets on Wednesday nights are the Booze on Broadway ghost tours that I've been doing for years. And then Thursday nights are the Haunted Downtown Tour. The Haunted Downtown Tour takes you into the Glen House. And those you can find. So I have multiple roles. I work at the university in continuing ed, and then also am the board president of the Historical Association that runs the Glen House. So the spooky tours, you can find those. Easiest way, probably just find me on social media or the Glen House. Tell me you want to do one of those things, and we can hook you up. But the university will give part of those proceeds back to the Glen House as you go into the house. So all benefits, but haunted history is cool. I like history personally, but it's another way to engage folks with those stories. And if you're into that, you can always take photographs and see what you find, because Cape has lots of ghost stories.
It really does.
Not just the Glen House.
I think it's been 10 years ago or so when Joel Rhodes published his book Haunted Cape Girardeau, and lots of ghost stories. Of course, the Glen House is in there, but those ghost tours are great, because if you've ever been on just a walking tour like that, you're going to learn history, right? But the spookiness of it, the aura of that, it's that wandering with the lantern and that kind of vibe. It is. I'm a history geek. I geek out, especially local history. I love knowing more about this building, and even our building here. We've got plenty of history just here in our River Radio studios. For as long as this building's been around.
You're on the Booze on Broadway tour. We talk about this building. We talk about the Marquette.
You got to tell them about the secret tunnel now, too.
They're trying to say that creepy secret tunnel. You guys missed out that you can't see that. That's a whole other show in and of itself.
You want to investigate the secret tunnel, you just reach out to River Radio and book a tour with Kirby.
Yeah,
a spooky tour with Kirby.
I mean, I think just being in that space in the dark, and it's funny.
Oh, I've had high school kids that have come through for tours, right? And go on up, and you guys can see it goes all the way over, and they start walking up in it, and then hit the lights, shut the door, listen for the squeals. That's how we spook them here at River Radio.
Should have brought you an EMF detector to see if you could.
Yeah,
it would go off in the.
Lord knows it would probably light up all. It probably speak in Spanish in this building. Who knows what would pop up? But yeah, this is it's a fun month, and like we said, the Glen House just brings so much fun, variety of what they're doing all month. But at the core, it's that local history, that local lore, and those wonderful, fun, spine-tingly, little bit of goosebumpy ghost stories that we all enjoy. And to me, like those, we're very wrapped up. A lot of us get wrapped up with costumes at Halloween, and we got to plan out our trick-or-treating and our trunk-or-treats, and all that new stuff is cool. But when you can get it down to bare bones and just tell some stories and sit around a fire pit and experience, that friendship and that commiseration of we're all scared together, hooray, we're all in this kind of thing, that really sets the season for me.
And it's just awesome. It's fun because as the Historical Association of Greater Cape, like we started as an organization that was all of the different historical sites in Cape, right?
Right.
So now people know us as running the Glen House, but it's been cool. I worked with the Dernbergers to do some ghost things on their property because Katie O'Farrell's was the German opera house, Turnavarian Hall. It has tons of stories.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, Laurie Everett's properties, the Indy House and Annie Laurie's. There's tons of stories about that building. You can go up and down, whether it's the the Marriott, which is the Himmelberger building, and there's
Port Cape
stories about it.
Girardeau.
Port Cape Girardeau.
Yep.
I mean, almost every single building and stop, there's some sort of story that
And
people have.
something that I have not really dug in on or really read a whole lot about, but now with all of the renovations, I wonder what dust may have stirred up in the Buckner Ragsdale building.
Oh, I mean, there were stories about it before, so I don't have the next generation. What's been cool, like, there's an irony in the fact that I'm the ghost storyteller, because if you know me personally, I'm phobically afraid of the dark. And I laugh every year for my birthday, because Whitney and I are friends, Whitney and a mutual friend that you have on all the time. She'll set up scary things for my birthday, and it's hard for her to believe that I don't enjoy them. Like, we've stayed at the Limp Mansion. This is torture.
Oh, yeah.
Whitney's like, this is so awesome. And I'm like, I hate every second of this. I mean, it's kind of cool, but also... and I've done
You're a
enough.
glutton for peer pressure.
Oh
That's
my
what
gosh!
it comes
Well, I've
down
done
to.
enough stuff with the Limp. I took a group up this last week for a beer barons tour. We did, St. Louis beer history, a group from the university, and I hadn't seen Patty in a while. They gave me a necklace. They were glad to see us back, and I'm like, I spend too much time in haunted places. But
You
on
need
a
a punch card.
on a personal level, like, I really am afraid of the dark, and I'm not someone who goes ghost hunting for fun, right? Like that. I know that you used to enjoy some of those things, but that to me is like, nope. I don't. No. But when you are like learning about some of these things and asking questions, sitting down with Tom Newmeyer, sitting down with Joel Rhodes, sitting down over the years with Frank Nickel and historians, and then sitting down with bar staff that have worked in these different locations, people who maybe played in bands, right, who are in locations late at nights, what have you. The consistency of the stories across generations, people who don't know each other, who don't really exist in sort of like the same sphere where they would hang out and talk to each other to corroborate, right? Tell shockingly similar stories about some of these spaces and locations, and they tell them in some cases going back 80 years, the lifespan, right? And it's just, that's when it sort of gets real and it gets interesting, because it's fun to do the campfire stuff, but the nerd in me, like the data collector, right, that's asking you, like, can you analyze these files? That really is fascinating to me, because some of it can be generational history where like we've passed the story of Old Green Eyes, right? From the cemetery through the community. And so I might get kids' versions because they heard it from their parents or whatever. But when you're talking about someone who is working late at night in a restaurant that's been a restaurant for 75 years, and somebody who worked in that same space 50 years ago, and this college student doesn't know this senior member of the community, and they tell a story almost detail for detail that is the same, the hair on the back of your neck starts to stand up. Because those are the things that, and I didn't realize, I started doing this in 2004 as a fundraiser for the university, and got involved with a lot of this stuff in that way. And I thought it would be fun, kind of like you said. It's a great time of year. I didn't realize that it would challenge what I believed. It would really introduce me to some cool people. It's taken me some cool places. I've done a series of paranormal conventions as a speaker lately, which is just the weirdest thing in the world. I mean, not the paranormal convention, but just that. I'm
but
like,
a little bit the paranormal.
How did I get here? I've done UFON conventions because, of course, we have our own UFO story, huge UFO story in the UFO community that takes place here in Cape Girardeau County. That if you watch a lot of late night TV and Ancient Alien kind of stuff, you see Cape mentioned quite a bit. And so there's a lot of lore there. But you find yourselves in these places and you hear the stories and you hear the consistency of the stories, and you start to, I don't know, quote Shakespeare, there may be more things in heaven and earth, Horatio.
Hey, well, and a lot of the modern technology with the ghost hunters and so forth is the essential part of it is they're trying to get into invisible spectrums of audio and of video and things that we don't catch typically as humans in our natural perspective in the plane that we're on, right? So that's kind of a you think of another dimension type of thing, but as the spirit world, and you get into that deep dive conversation, and I think that's part two of why 3:30 in the morning, you're done tearing down a system and things are going on. It's because you've slowed down and you've, took time to listen beyond what you're usually just on track with.
Or, some people, the weirdest experiences that I've had at the Glen House have been daytime experiences, to be honest. But I think most of the time, a theory that evolves out of all of this, people have more scary experiences in the dark, is the sensory deprivation.
Yes.
You're just listening more. You're paying more attention because the other senses. But to the scary things that have happened to me, like the speaker, that was a beautiful day and my guard was down and I didn't expect a weird thing to happen, which made that even more sort of alarming to me at the time, because everything else was so incredible. The birds were tweeting outside, the sun was shining,
the rites of spring was playing in the
air.
And
Then that happened. So I don't know, but it is a fascinating thing. A lot of that, if you can call it science, the ghost science stuff, as I have boiled it down to make it make sense to me, they focus a lot on energy can be neither, do you remember the stuff?
The
created
nor
destroyed. Right. It simply changes form. So if people are energetic, most of the folks who are really involved in this say, well, what happens to that energy when we die? If you don't have a body, then can energy manipulate energy? So that's how they explain hot and cold spots, the thermal energy. It's how they explain the interference with electronic equipment, with electromagnetic frequencies, those sorts of things. So energy trying to impact energy in an attempt to communicate. And so in a kind of way, there's some pieces that make sense in there, I think.
So in other words, the perkier you are, the better ghost you become.
Hopefully. And then conversely, the angrier you are, you theoretically.
That's try to keep my anger balanced with
that negative energy. We don't want that. We want happy ghosts in the
that's
G.
when we that's when we get into the weird poltergeist, like throwing up pea soup and all that.
Yeah, we don't want that. Pass. We like the ones that just talk on speakers.
And again, that's why I'm spooky buddies over Friday the 13th. I'm not a scary movie guy. Like, you want to say, oh, let's go see the such and such horror movie. That's a hard pass for me. I just don't like. I don't like them.
No, I'm way more Disney Pixar Halloween, right? Like I'm that.
That's it. That's it.
So it's funny. One of our local city council members wrote a book, a murder in a house called the Flynn House, and its main character sounds a lot like me, and and has issues with this Victorian House Museum much the way I do. And I'm like, I feel a little seen, and also
targeted.
Am I that big of a wuss? Because I think I might be. But it is, it is definitely interesting. And I think even if you're not a believer in this stuff, because, I am not here to try and convert anyone into belief or disbelief. People have been doing this stuff since the beginning of recorded history. Charles Dickens, people forget he wrote A Christmas Carol because a common tradition on Christmas Eve when families gathered was they'd sit around the fire and tell ghost stories, right? So we've been doing this for a very long time. It's not new. It's always been interesting to consider all the possibilities. So Dale Pruitt, do you remember Dale from Port Cape?
Yeah. Good old Dale.
Yeah.
Well, and when you mentioned, Staff earlier, he was the first person that popped into my head. Because Dale was at Port Cape for, the majority of his life, basically.
He did an interview for a KRCU. It's funny, I started my day at KRCU doing their fund drive. But he did an interview. Students did a production that won a student Emmy, I think about 2005 or 6, about ghost stories. And they were asking Dale about what he had seen or hadn't seen. And you can almost hear him. If you knew Dale, he smoked, and so you can almost hear him smoking in the interview, right? And he takes a deep breath and he said, well, I don't reckon it matters what I think about ghosts, because they sure as H words still seem to believe in me. And I was like, it doesn't really matter what I think. If they believe in me, this maybe, we might be asking the question wrong.
Yeah. And I mean, we had some spooky moments when you mentioned, bands playing and stuff. I can remember, late, and it's just us and a bartender tearing down equipment or something, and somebody'd go to the back to stash something and come back just white faced and like, what happened? And they'd have some off story, or like, I was 20 feet away from this and I saw this chair just scoot 4 inches across the floor or something like that, that would just lift them up. And if you ever back in those days went back into the crawling access before they kind of renovated the back area on that second floor up there, it was a lot of storage, just a lot of dust and perfectly spooky
It
opportunities.
was crazy. I was there one night. It's been in the last 6 months or so, and it was just I had a friend in from out of town, and Taylor was on the other side of the bar, and he and I were sitting just chatting with her, and there's wine glasses on a wine rack that hang underneath
Mm.
the mirror part of the bar. And while we're talking, one fell off, and Taylor just kind of looked at me. We kept talking, and then another one fell off, and then another one fell off. And they actually, if you're ever in there, they keep a book behind the bar where when those kinds of things happen, the bartenders now they write
Document
the
it.
stories down. Yeah. So if you're ever in there and you know any of those guys and it's late at night, ask them if they'll read you some of the things from the book,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's really fascinating. And then anytime I go in when I'm doing ghost tours, or I'll work with corporate visitors that come to town or what have you, and I'll go in and they'll be like, "Hey, Christy, there's a new story in the book," and so I get the
And that's
latest
what's
scoop.
wild is, that it's been going on so long, and now they're, documenting it that way, and they're still getting enough activity that
Oh
they're
yeah,
still documenting
yeah.
things. Like you said, they may not believe in the ghosts, but the ghosts believe in them, right?
And I think that, for a very long time, so when I said like ghost stories have been around and a part of our culture,
Mhm.
but for a very long time, we sort of like divided the world into like serious spaces, like museums and,
Mhm.
and serious spaces.
Academic
Yeah,
history
they
versus
didn't we didn't
whatever else.
talk about like the folklore and community history in the same space that we talked about the dates of the and types of furniture and the
Mhm.
architectural styles and things. But when you look at a place like the Glen House, it's been a museum since 1967, opened its doors in 74, right? So as long as we've been alive,
Mhm.
that's been a museum. And an overlay into this folklore and community history truly is the ghost stories, right? They become a part of the culture of the community. They become a part of the historical story and
Mhm.
footprint. And so, Port Cape is a perfect example. The footings of that building go back to the 1700s. It's been everything from a warehouse, slaves were traded there, speakeasy, like all kinds of
Mhm.
things. And so, those stories, of course, are really culturally relevant, but so is this like 50 years of these stories that have been passed from employee to
Mhm.
employee, and new employees who don't know anything or don't know any better. Again, telling consistent stories that when David Knight opened the restaurant, and the first people that work there, when they come back and visit, they meet these brand new kids, a lot of times college students, that are telling
The same
stories
stories that
that
they experienced.
mhm,
Yeah.
it's just those are crazy moments.
Well, and to me, the spirit of these historical places, not to throw puns in, but the spirit is those stories, the humanitarian side. And again, you speak of humans and ghost stories, but those cultural stories, those folklore, those pieces, I mean, that was history before we had history. That's how we got our history, right? Was those word of mouth stories and passing those things down generationally. And so that rounds out it was built in such a date. It was used as
Right.
a temporary Civil War headquarters from X to Z. The chronological timeline of things is awesome, and structurally, it's built in this style, and this architect was a part. All of those things. That's your square peg, right? And then you round it out with all these beautiful
Well,
stories and scary stories
and
and fun stories.
you see a really relevant. So, like, you can go to Gettysburg and take a ghost tour now, an officially sanctioned ghost tour. Almost all of your presidential houses,
Hmm.
Biltmore. Like, so if you look at the really big legacy museums and historical spaces, they are all beginning to embrace it. And I do think that like the one of the coolest things about like a walking tour, like the Booze on Broadway or
Hmm.
haunted downtown tours, we as a society, we don't slow down, right? And so I remember when I was working with several folks, because in order to put these together, people have forgotten, because I've been here for almost 30 years, that I'm not from Cape. So every story I have is because I've had a conversation like this with someone and been like, hey, can I record that or write it down? And would you mind if I told your story? Right. And so when you do that, the first few times that I walked the length of Broadway, right down to the river, and you do it every morning, you take these incredible pictures and you
Yeah,
put them
to
on
get
your
my
social media.
sunrise in the
Yeah.
morning. Yeah.
But you don't realize the small details in these buildings, the things that, because it was a pedestrian community at that time. So there's lots of stuff that when you're driving by at the normal speed of life, you just don't see or experience. And so if these are things, whether it's an architectural tour that's your jam, or whether it's a historical ghost tour, that get you to slow down and pay attention and look at your community in a different way. Um, Almost everyone who's ever done a tour, even if they didn't have a ghostly experience, right? They had some sort of experience that when they walked away at the end of the night, we would have a cool conversation about, man, I never really looked at the tiles on the Southeast Missourian building. Or did you know Manatee had these really cool glass tiles underneath? Those are really rare and hard to find. Or the Spanish tiles that are on a lot of our buildings, and the history of our community that's both Spanish and French, right? So these really cool conversations, and then the text message and messages that come back from all of this, of people who've gone other places and they're like, I didn't realize how cool or unique or interesting this building or this community or our legacy of this in this community. So it's just an awesome way to me to get to spark conversations that in our normal lives we don't slow down to have.
Yep. That is 100%. And yeah, and that's something that I noticed. It's been pre-COVID years ago, but I did a ride along with Cape PD. And I'm typically the driver, right, in the house, and you're paying attention to the road and stuff. But in the ride along, and it was intentional as we were in a police car, but I really started paying attention to just looking out the window, looking down the alleys as we went by, looking at the houses that we pass, because we pass them. I make this loop 50 times a day or whatever, and you don't stop and pay attention. But when you're in the passenger seat and when you find yourself in a comfortable spot where, okay, I can pay attention over there and I don't have to worry about running into a wall or a truck or whatever, you start to see things you didn't see before. And it's like you said, it's the same deal. And you walk down Main Street and the old Hex building where those tiles are, or the old painted ceiling it's about shot now. But just those little elements of Halloween, freaking Hanukkah, it doesn't matter what holiday it is, those pieces are there and they're telling stories year round. And so it's a heartbeat of what our town is those stories. And that's true for St. Genevieve. That's true for, New Madrid, anywhere around here that takes some pride in its local history. I think if you embrace those warm elements, those pieces that you do miss on the day to day, or may not be in that history book that you read about your town, or the flyer you picked up when you got in. So,
well, or the conversation you wouldn't have had. I'll give you a fun parting story, and this is a Freck Shivelbein parting story. And so I was working on this stuff, and Tom Newmeyer had been working on writing a book, and he said, "Here, there's some people that you need to go talk to." And he said, "Did you know that Cape Girardeau had a vampire bat story?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "You should probably talk to Freck about that." And I knew who he was,
right.
and we had interacted, but we didn't have a lot of conversations. And so, as far as a conversation starter to go in and say, "Hey, like I hear that you have some stories," and I got a ton
Oh, I'm sure.
for
Yeah.
anyone who knew Mr. Shivelbein. But he said, so he started talking about the Shivelbeins building had a German Rathskeller in the bottom. And if you don't know what that is, it was sort of like a nefarious little lounge that was in the basement. There was an undertaker in that building. There are a bunch of things. So the story is that at the corner, that would be like on Broadway and over by let's see, Burritoville, Pacific
Okay. Yeah.
Street. There was always a saloon on that corner for generations, right? And it was called either the First or Last Chance Saloon, because depending on which way you were going in or out of Cape, that's when the road ended and it was dirt, right? So it was your first or last chance as you entered or left Cape to get a drink. And people would wander after they had drank, and they would go to the Rathskeller or whatever. And when the undertakers went into the buildings, which would now be Shivelbeins and where Lori Everett is, They were not the most hygienic businesses, so they would often have wagons loaded in the back of their establishments with fluids and things, may we say. Um, and
Mortuarium leftovers.
yeah, and they would not take them every day to the river. Let's think about that, where they
Yeah.
dump them, right? Sometimes they would sit out there for a while. And you can imagine a Southeast Missouri summer or whatever, and insects would be attracted to these things, right? And so, what likes to eat insects in the summertime? Well,
Right.
bats, right? And so that corner, and of course, if you look at the architecture of the Schimmelbein building, there's some eaves on there that were a perfect roosting place for bats. And so they would hang out around that because they had plenty to eat from the bugs that were attracted to that. But sometimes those hapless folks wandering from the First or Last Chance Saloon, as the bugs would be, swarming them, mosquitoes or whatever you can imagine, the bats would come down to get the bugs. But of course, if you were just inebriated enough, had witnessed enough spirits in the evening,
Right.
you would have thought vampire bat. And so there's some old stories, newspaper stories about these vampire bats in Cape Girardeau. Of course, we never had vampire bats,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
this time of year on the corner around Schimmelbeins, watch out for the vampire bats. And they still have an issue with bats roosting in the upper part of that building, and actually all along that area, that because there's some caves and other things. So bats are a common occurrence. But if you had communed with the spirits, or still are communing with the spirits downtown,
a couple of shots in any kind of bat. It could be the world's most friendliest bat.
Right.
That thing flies in your
Yeah.
face, and it's Vlad, and he's coming to suck your blood.
So the vampire bats of Cape Girardeau. But we had a really, really good laugh over.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's just, part of the fun that comes with telling these ghost stories is, and now we can, walk by that place and look at that architecture and go, yeah, I can see that happening.
Yeah,
I mean, too. Yeah.
Crazy stories of days gone by, but also wonderful conversations with Freck Schimmelbein. And until he got old enough that he was not out wandering the streets on his own, I think every time I ran into him after that, he had another of those sort of interesting, fun folklore stories, and they've been woven into the stories I tell now.
And that's what I think is wonderful about it, is because, like Freck and even going back to like Thad Bullock and some of these guys that used to be around in the day, that were colorful characters themselves, and were loaded with these stories, is that, as we said, that's how our history stays alive, and you're able to take those stories and wind them into what you do, and spin a new yarn for everybody to see.
And hopefully create a new legacy. That's really the purpose of the trick-or-treating. We want there to be free events. I want this generation of little guys to remember coming into this house and bring their kids back. Last year was the first year we opened the house on Halloween. And frankly, there were as many adults, and the adults were full of stories of like when their school brought them there, or these other sorts of things. And many of them hadn't visited in years, but it was the generational. They weren't just sending their kids to trick or treat. They were coming in too, right? They wanted to be a part of the experience. And so I talked to the board and I said, guys, we've got to do this every year, because there's just something magical about creating that community memory. And hopefully they'll come back for other reasons.
Well, yeah, and that's when they leave and they hop in the car, the immediate discussion is, what was your favorite thing, or did you guys see any ghosts, or what freaked you out, or hey, what kind of candy did you give me a Snickers, but that conversation starts the second they're out of there, and hopefully that keeps that fire smoldering, and they come back.
And that's a piece of, whether it's the work that I do at the university or the work at the Glenn House, people have said, and I've done presentations all over the country. There's a book, The Anarchist Guide to Historic Preservation. I paraphrase it, but that's, if you Google it, you'll find it. And it talks about embracing these sorts of things. And again, for a long time, this stuff, it wasn't popular to incorporate the two. But today's generations of students, when we're teaching them about site preservation, SEMO has a historic preservation major. And so I can help those students understand, like, this is another gateway to communicate. And we use the students to work with these programs anytime that we can. But it's also about, like, you meet people where they're at and what they're interested in. And very often it will start with someone was interested in a ghost story, or, an arsenic dress, or what have you. But then I see them at other times of the year because now they're just genuinely interested in old places and old buildings and those kinds of conversations. And they've had their own experience with talking to maybe a community elder, which I'm now realizing I'm becoming. Like, I realize that I am the
I
age of
mean,
in the 90s, whenever I started volunteering with the Glen House, and there were older ladies that, I was the one who ran up and down the stairs because the stairs would hurt your knees. That's me now. I asked someone the other day, like, hey, can you go get that?
uh-huh. Well,
Like, when did that happen?
and it's on topic, off topic, but it's bothered me now because I was a Golden Girls fan as a kid, still am a Golden Girls fan. But they were supposed to be like in their 50s, all
Oh,
living
yeah.
together, and I'm like, they're not that old.
Right. Like, we're not moving in
Thank
with,
God we improved hairstyles since the Golden Girls era. But yeah, and that's kind of cool too because I grew up here, on the opposite side of that, and I've lived my whole life, in this area for the most part. And I've got stories from out in the sticks when we were riding four-wheelers where somebody saw something, or out on a county road, those kind of things. But yeah, and those stories surround us all around the community, and I think that's cool too. Is sometimes you'll meet somebody down at the Glen House, one of these things that says, that you'll start a side conversation about, well, my grandpa, he grew up in Blodgett. He used to tell us about the swamp man of Blodgett, or
Yeah.
whatever the heck it might
Yeah.
be. But those stories come back up, and then that just, again, it just how the fabric is woven of our
And
history.
it is engagement, and it is important to our communities. And whether it's tying a university and its students to the community, whether it's tying an old house to the community, whether it's introducing tourists and visitors to the stories and some of the magical places. Because coming from outside, like everybody, right? We all have our disenchanted moments with the communities that
Sure.
we live in. But I tell people there are 3 or 4 times every year, maybe I'm doing a ghost tour and I'm up by the Limbaugh's house at Fort A, right?
Right.
And the lights are on downtown, and I look across, and it's like falling in love, right? Like you fall in love with this place and space all over again. And it's such a magical thing to introduce new people and have them literally sometimes ooh and ah when they see a certain view.
Something that we take for granted,
right,
all the time.
or it's almost even cooler when it's someone like you and you turn around. It's a space you see every day. It's how I can tell you feel when you take pictures of some of those sunrises, because I'll see your comment and I know that you came down the street, that you come down every morning, and that one particular morning the sun was just hitting everything just right. And yesterday you hated everything about this place, and today you're like, I love you. Like, it's this
It's so
cool,
fun being all over the place.
but it's such a cool
Yeah.
feeling to be able to share
I
that.
try to be intentional. It's something I've tried and I've kind of caught myself doing, especially as like we've traveled more to other small-ish size-ish towns, Cape-sized towns, where you go into a new town. Let's say you go to Farmington, and you've been to Farmington maybe 4 times in your life. So every turn you make is a new road, and you get to this one hill, and you're like, man, that's a really weird steep hill here. You observe those things as an outsider, whereas somebody just says, I hate this hill. I hit this on my bike every day.
Yeah.
But when they come to Cape and they see what we see every day, when you think of if you go up Gordonville Road and you crest the hill right past the Boy Scouts, and you can see the whole spread of West Cape, and you just pause for a second and say, I'm not just looking at traffic madness on William Street. Like, there's all this wooded area and all this, everything that's tied in together. And so when you step back and try to kind of reobserve your immediate environment that you have been so embedded in and try to see it from that outside, I think it really does spark the brain to start kind of falling in love again, like you said.
And reconnecting. Because again, I think the hardest thing, especially if you are a connector, and I feel it, like I'm a people person until I'm not, right? And I think most of us, but the world right now, you find yourself kind of closing off, right? I did a presentation in Springfield a couple of weeks ago with University of Missouri Extension, talking about neighborliness, hard word to say. And in the 50s, the criteria that made a good neighbor, friendly, there when you need them, whatever. And they just redid these surveys, and now the criteria of a good neighbor is keeps to themselves, right? Like that's how we define. They mind their own business, they keep to themselves, they don't bother me, right? When
We've
we
become
used
very
to,
guarded.
right, and when we used to say this is a person that if I need a cup of sugar, right?
Mhm.
I know their names. And less than 80% of Missourians knew the names of 3 of their neighbors. Think about that, Darren. Like
That's
it's
wild.
just kind of crazy. And so
Mhm.
then we wonder why in the larger scale we can't find medium ground in a lot of
Yeah.
arguments, right? And I think it goes back to not connecting.
Mhm.
And so, whatever way, right? Whether it's like the magic of a sunset or a ghost tour or a historical place, music,
Mhm.
right? Storytelling, any way that we find connection, even if it's fleeting, I think it kind of reminds us of what it feels like to be connected. And psychologists say that we as humans, like, that's what we crave.
Yeah.
Like, it's not money, it's connectedness.
And organic connectedness. Not,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
appreciate you being here, but yeah, that's it.
So isolation is one of the biggest factors in depression. And some of the grants that I've written over the years for programming, whether it was Porch Concert Series that we were talking about before, or stuff with the Glen House, at the heart of it all, it was like, how do we leverage public and private money to create opportunities for people to connect?
Mhm.
Because if you can create organic connection, we know it in business, like networking.
Right.
We create all these artificial scenarios where people have to talk to each other because we know that the synergies that happen are good for the economy, right?
Right.
But like on personal levels, because we've gotten so busy and closed off, we just don't do it. So
Right.
if I have a group of 50 people on a tour, it's really awesome. The s'more pit, right? The s'more pit at the Glen House is the most sort of amazing sociological thing for me to watch, is people will typically sit down in their little pods.
Right.
But if they
Click
sit
up.
there long enough, there's something about sitting around a campfire, and especially give them a s'more stick, they start talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, people have met and exchanged information and, like gotten to know other people in their community just because they were kind of forced while they were waiting to sit by a campfire.
If we do not continue to weave, the fabric of our lives will start to fray.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying this is a perfect answer, but I feel like if there's things like that, I had my own purposes for all of these things that we started, but everybody can do that, whatever their,
Mm-hmm.
their special passion is, to be able to share those stories in places or events or what have you, right?
Yep.
Like,
It'll be awesome.
so.
Well, it's awesome. Christy, I'm so glad you came in today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Talking
So,
spooky and beyond.
yeah.
I love it.
Always the beyond, huh?
And I encourage you guys, get after the Glen House online. You can find the websites glenhouse.org. That's with 2 N's, GLENNNHOUSE.org. And hit the website. But be sure to follow them on social. Christy keeps you updated there. They got the events set up for all the things coming up. Monday Madness kicking it off this Monday the 13th. I need a good echo effect in there. But, Mondays are a horror story anyway. So come on out for that. And the ongoing ghost tours throughout. And then this haunted speakeasy event is going to be a blast. Come hang out with that one. Is there a password or, well, we couldn't put that on air.
No, we couldn't. I mean, speakeasies are very, very selective,
Yes,
it's easy. Glenhouse.org is the website, but honestly, like everyone else, most of our immediate stuff is now on socials. Facebook is the easiest to find. And my socials are wide open for the detriment of myself and others.
Me too.
So, I mean, you can find me under myself and, feel free to just message me about any of this stuff and I can hook you up with the best way to connect. There or beyond. I mean, that's what you find your people. We find each other, and then how many times do I reach out to you and say, "Hey, do you know anything about a thing?" And then you pass off. So connections, man, they're important.
Absolutely, and hopefully some folks will come out and you'll make some connections. Around the
I hope
around the s'more pit and beyond.
Mama's got $80,000 in windows to pay for because old houses are expensive.
Good Lord, I know. And mine's not nearly as old as yours, but they're perpetual money pits, but in a very good way. So yeah, the haunted speakeasy, of course, the Halloween event with Mississippi Mutts, and then come on out Halloween night with your costumes and your kiddos and do a little trick or treating and have some fun. Glenhouse.org, big time on Facebook. Find the Glen House there. Check out the calendar too. All these events that we've talked about today are there. And as we get into holidays down the road, there'll be even more adventures awaiting.
We
Christmas
take
time's very special.
2 weeks. We have right at 2 weeks, and then we will have the house completely flipped. It's sort of like we go from jack-o'-lanterns to Christmas
Jack
madness.
Frost.
Yeah, it's crazy. And there'll be probably 20 trees. A sneak peek of the theme this year, because we're dealing with windows. We decided that windows to the past. What do we think about? How about through the looking glass?
Oh, there you go.
So through the looking glass into the past, and so
Cool.
it's Alice in Wonderland theme this year.
That'll be fun.
It's going to be a blast.
We'll pay attention to the white rabbit when he tells us to get down.
I sort of say it'll be any time now, because as crazy as it is, the holiday season is upon us.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
It is. Oh my God. Well, you can send Christy a message. She'll send you that file too of the little speaker saying help. Or you can message me and I'll send it to you. We'll just pass it around like
somebody give me a logical explanation. Like, I'm looking for a logical explanation.
Well, again, my guest today, Christy Mershon, with the Glen House here in Cape Girardeau, ready for spooky season and beyond. Christy, thanks again for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
That has been another Humans in Tune segment here on 93.9 Mike FM. And of course, I encourage you to catch these and any other conversations we have on our podcast. You can just search 93.9 Mike FM or search Humans in Tune on your podcast software to find the other episodes. Be sure to follow our social for upcoming events and stay tuned to 93.9 Mike FM for further adventures ahead. Thanks for tuning in for today's Humans in Tune.
Thanks for catching this Humans in Tune conversation with 93.9 Mike FM. Find previous interviews on our Facebook page, or you can listen via our podcast at 939mikefm.com.